Welcome.
Yeah.
This is the first time you've caught us live. I am Samira Williams. I am a trauma therapist and a trauma resolution coach and mentor. This is my good friend and partner, Andrea, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Andy, and I'm a trauma-informed and resilient coach. And I also work specializing in the nervous system and IFS, which is internal family systems. So, and I have a book called How Do I Deal with My Emotions? And I have coined a method that you can learn about there, and just really talking about how to become, my mission really is truly how to become more trauma-informed in your life.
Beautiful,
Yeah,
beautiful. And Lord knows we need the most trauma-informed conversations now more than ever.
absolutely.
We are excited to kick off day one of our masterclass series, Embodied Leadership.
Mhm.
We're talking today all about trauma-informed mindset because we know that mindset comes up all the time. Let me just hit record. We know that trauma informed comes up all of the time. It is a beautiful conversation, and we're happy that more people are talking about it. We also want to support you in understanding and learning tools and practices that can support you in really applying the trauma informed leadership framework
Mhm.
to your life, to your own personal leadership. I say all of the time to family, to friends, to clients, we're all leaders. We are
Mhm.
all leaders of our own life. We are the first leader of ourself, right? It's ourself. And so what other titles and roles we have are great, but when we embody leadership in our own life, in our own world, our own personal inner world, that's when we begin to see change inwardly and outwardly. So we're happy to share some thoughts that we have on this. We're going to have a few days where we go over the framework that we have to better support you with trauma-informed leadership, how we actually embody that.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And I just wanted to add, because everything you said, obviously, I stand by 100%, but I just wanted to add that leadership can look really different in our lives and in different roles that we have. So like as a mother of four, my leadership role as a mom is different than my leadership role as a wife, or my leadership role as an entrepreneur, or as a trauma-informed coach. So but like Smira said, we are all leaders and we all have leadership that lives inside of us. What we really want you to walk away from, if you walk away from anything, is defining those leadership qualities that you have and being able to hone them, to hone and own them. Because when we just know that we're leaders, but we're not owning the leadership, then we're not advocating for ourselves. We're not delegating the responsibility. We're not asking for help or receiving help. And we'll talk about all this later, but we just want you to really walk away with knowing that you're a leader no matter what. But now we're just going to fine tune that leadership. We're going to master that leadership with this simple framework.
Beautiful. We're so happy you're here. Hi, Lawana, my love. And so we will just
Hi.
jump into a quick 30-second, just drop in, and then we will get into it. And so I invite you, if it feels good for you, to just notice wherever you are, whatever is supporting you. Maybe it's a chair, maybe it's your sofa, maybe you're on a yoga mat. Maybe you're moving throughout your day. Whatever you're doing is perfectly fine. Just notice what's underneath you. Is it that chair? Is it the sofa? Maybe you're in your car, whatever it is, just notice what your sit points are on and just allow that support, that sacred support, to meet you where you are, reminding you that you are always supported, you are always deeply cared for. And we don't have to hope that the seat or the chair or the sofa is going to support us. We trust that it is. And the same is true for infinite presence. It's here to support us on our journey into our own deeper embodied leadership through the highs and the lows with the certainty and the uncertainty. This presence is here to support us in all that we do. We truly cannot get it wrong. And we just ask for the highest intention to come forth in our beautiful conversation today, that everyone would get exactly what they need at this time, and that we would be channels of clarity, of certainty, of trauma-informed leadership that supports you in the highest and best ways on your journey. You might take a conscious breath in and out. We say, so be it, and so it is. You might bring presence back into your body. You might move your body any way that you see fit. You might hold your own hand, give yourself a hug, and you open your eyes and come back whenever you're ready. And so with that, we are going to jump in. There is lots of conversation around becoming, right? We know there's a book, Michelle Obama's book, Becoming. It's lots of talk around how do we do it, becoming the one. How do we actually become? It's a process and a journey. And so much of trauma-informed mindset is about the path of becoming. And we discuss back and forth if we should start here or not. But the truth is, and Andy said this so beautifully, becoming is the work. It is the place we're trying to get to. And the flip side is, what we want to support you with is knowing you're already there in truth. You are already there. It's the recognizing it and the claiming it that really helps you to activate that and embody it in ways that's going to bring about the shifts and the results that you're wanting.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I think that's, and I don't speak for myself, I'm sure here, but people that are live with us right now or are going to be later watching the replay, and we've talked about this, that the becoming is the hardest part, because it's stepping into that like role that we're talking about. Like it's stepping in, it's owning the things. And we're not always the most popular when we're a leader. We're not, because leaders are leaders, they're not followers. So followers, I would say, tend to fall more into like wanting to be popular, wanting the likes, wanting the comments, wanting the notoriety, where leadership, true leadership, is silent. There's not always a lot of recognition in true leadership. I know that that can feel devastating, especially to content creators, especially when your mission and your purpose is so strong in your heart. And we're going to talk more about that later. But when you are so grounded in your mission and purpose, not being validated can be like so heartbreaking. I know for me, it's been there where it's been like, I quit, I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore. But what brings us back to that place of is being able to step into that leadership, even when it's difficult, even when those moments that you're not popular, even the moments when people are not recognizing you, even the moments when you've got to start from ground zero and build yourself back up. Those are the moments when you start to become that leader, because that in itself is leadership. Decisions that you make on a daily basis, if they're intentional decisions, and what I mean by intentional is that you have an intention behind the decision that you're making. That is leadership. It's not just like, a quick fire decision, an impulsive thing that you're doing. That's not leadership necessarily. That's, you're going off of like a gut feeling. Leadership is thought out. It's more intentional. It's being safe. It's being ethical. It's remembering that you are the one that people are looking to. You're posing yourself as the expert, the authoritative figure in your niche, in your industry, whatever it may be for you, because I'm sure that I'm speaking to more entrepreneurs that are more likely to be practitioners, therapists, coaches, healers of that kind of realm. So we want to make sure that when we're leading in that capacity, we are being very intentional with those decisions.
It's very true. And you bring up a good point. It's like sometimes we can get caught up in our ego. We all do it. We've all been there. Ego is not a bad thing, right? But we have to make sure that we are just aware of the tricks that it can play. And many of us have learned at this point in our life, right? There's ego, we all have it. And there's essence, and we all have it. There's ego, and there's soul. And for most of us who are doing soul work, meaningful work, that we believe that we're here for a mission, we have work to do in the world. And most of you who are here in either of our world, our collective world, you know you're here for a reason. You are busy working out to find out and to remember what that reason is, and to be focused on that in any aspect of your life, the kind of person that you're being, what you're standing for, what you're speaking up for, the changes that you're making in your own life, breaking generational curses, which is not for the faint of heart, right? Doing the things that you know you're here to do is what makes you a person on purpose, and it makes you committed to the journey of creating a more trauma-informed world, community, right? More trauma-informed families. There's so many aspects of our world that are on fire because of the lack of trauma-informed care and trauma-informed practice, and honestly, trauma-informed living. But I believe that all starts with trauma-informed leadership. How are we leading ourselves through it all? How are we leading ourselves and our communities through all the things? Part of that is really being able to tap into our essence and remembering, why are we doing any of this anyway? Why are we doing it? We can't just do it for the likes and for the numbers and even for the money, even for feeling as though we're doing it right if we get these things right. Because the truth of the matter is, and we've all been here, I certainly have, if we're not clear on why we're doing something, we can get the result that we want and still feel like unhappy, unfulfilled, like, your world on fire, even though you checked the box and got the thing that you wanted. So if we're not clear why we're doing it and why it matters, and this is not just about flashy outward results, like a certain income number, a certain number of followers, having a certain number on the scale, getting your kid into a certain school, right? Any of these things, getting the guy, getting the girl, getting the person right. There's so many things that we sometimes are taught will make us feel successful, will make us feel like we've made it if we do this, if we get this. And that's really like an ego-based, patriarchy-based kind of leadership that we have built an entire society on. And to do the opposite of that, honestly, is unlearning some of these tendencies, beliefs, thoughts that are not helpful, that are in fact harmful, and that are not leading us forward in the way that we want to. So when we lean into more of a heart-centered, like desire-based, what are my desires? Why does any of this matter? How does it matter in order to move humanity forward? I know this might sound lofty, but it's true. The kind of people that we are becoming, it matters. The kind of humans that we are raising, it matters. Doing this coaching work matters. Some people, they may have the experience of talking about something so vulnerable and so valuable and so sensitive. And when they're working on their coaching goals with you, this may be the first time they share something so important. And no, we don't need coaches to put the pressure on themselves of having to be a trauma therapist or some kind of like neuroscientist. That's not it. That's not what it's about. But it is to say, am I going to embrace the work that I'm doing because it matters, because I matter? We're all made of matter, right? Scientifically, we matter. Our work matters. Am I going to lean into my growing edges and gain the skills and the practice to be able to lead people well, even if that's holding something so sacred with somebody and ensuring that they get the kind of support or the kind of support in their next steps, so they can say, I worked with this coach, we were working on money mindset or, embodiment or my career goals, whatever it was. And all of a sudden, we had been working around this limiting belief. This thing from my past came up and they held me so beautifully. They were able to support me in getting whatever support I needed, or in just being witnessed in love and deep respect that what happened to me, my experience mattered. and that my voice is important and is worthy of being heard. That kind of experience is life changing in and of itself.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point too, because, I have a lot of reflection of this in different areas of my life, but the one that's sticking out the most for me is, the work that I do now with kids and seeing this like played out day to day. Like, no textbook can like teach you that kind of empathy. Like, you can learn any skill, you can learn like any modality, you can learn any theory, and you can put it into practice, and that's all great. And maybe that's what some people are doing, but no textbook, no other person can really teach you how to be empathetic or compassionate. Now, I'm not saying empathy where you don't have boundaries, where you become just trauma bonded to people and you're just kind of the doormat. I'm talking about that empathy where, again, it's intentional and you are just like you're saying, like witnessing someone or holding them in where they are. Like, I always say to my clients, like, meeting you where you're at, not pushing you where I want you to go because I want you to transform so quickly. So, because I want the result to brag about. No, it's because, and a lot of coaches will do that. They'll push you into a place of transformation where it's not sustainable. And I'm not saying this to, crappy poo on coaches, because that's not what this is about. But it is fact when we're watching, and especially where I'm at and being a coach for so long and working with different people, is that I've seen it. I've witnessed, in containers where coaches are pushing people into transformation, is what I call it. And then it's not sustainable. And then they're falling apart because it wasn't an intentional process. It was more about get the result so I feel better about the work that I'm doing. Because here's the thing, like Smyra said, it's ego, and we all have that, right? We all want our people to succeed, and sometimes we feel responsible for those results. Like, if someone hires us to support them in a container or on a transformational journey with healing or whatever it is, it could be in business, it could be in health, fitness, whatever it is, but it's kind of like, this is the baby, right? We want this baby to blossom and grow up and be an active member in society and like really be able to sustain themselves. But sometimes our leadership isn't quite there yet. So it's hard to take someone where we haven't gone ourselves. And if we find that like our results are wavering or our results are not sustainable, then that's an indicator that we're not ready to take someone the distance yet. We've got to come back to ground zero and work on our foundation. And that's where when I was listening back to what Smyra said around leadership and owning that piece of it, it's really about self-responsibility at that point. Like, where am I on this journey? The work that I'm doing here to become that leader, we've got to take that responsibility. So I'm going to ask a question here for you, and feel free to drop it in the chat, but where would you say on your journey of leadership, are you really convicted in your why? Because this is the first step to becoming the leader, is being convicted in the why. If you are wavering in your why, if you post something that you're really strong opinionated on, and it's, again, trauma-informed, intentional, you are empathetic to perspective and all that stuff, but you post it and it's your beliefs and someone disproves that or says, no, I don't agree with you. Do you cower? And do you start apologizing for because they're uncomfortable? Because in leadership, other people will get uncomfortable. They will. I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it with other leaders. Leaders are not made to make everyone be comfortable. We're there to break cycles. We're there to break the generational curses. That is not a comfortable position for ourselves or for the people that are receiving that, because some people are not ready and willing to go there. So the first question is, are you ready and willing to go there? And are you convicted in your why? And please put, in the chat, a number 1 for yes, I am convicted and ready to go there, or a 2, yeah, not so much, I'm still wavering, I need a little bit of support, or 3, like, haven't even thought about it. I'm just curious where we're at with that.
It's so true. And please don't take this as you have it's either or. It's not. It's both and. And we're going to talk all about that in one of our days together. Just the duality of holding both, right? Both and. Because the truth is, sometimes we dip our toe in to leadership, leading ourselves, leading other people, embracing it, and we feel like we are on cloud nine. We are killing it, like it's the best thing ever. And then we have days where things go wrong. You had a plan, the plan did not roll out the way you thought. You did everything right. You prepared all of these things. You had a client session, things are going really well. We're making so much progress. And then boom, like they take 10 steps backwards. And sometimes it can be easy for our ego to get in the way and make us think, what am I doing wrong? Like, what is happening? Why isn't this working? There can be pressure. There can be pressure to get it right. And the truth is, when we're clear on our why, and when we have a large enough context for why we are showing up to the work, to the thing, it can hold whatever happens. It can hold the complexity of life. It can hold the complexity of leadership. Leadership in and of itself is being able to face challenges and to meet them head on, even when they are challenging, right? Sometimes the difference between a leader and a follower, and in some aspect of life, we each can be both, right?
Mhm.
Leaders do not run away from the adversity. They do not run away from the challenges. They do not run away from the hard things. And there's a difference between taking a step back and like nourishing yourself and like taking a minute to decompress and get yourself straight and clear. That's different from hiding from the hard thing. Sometimes we need a minute to be with whatever's happening or what has happened before we can take a step back and say, okay, I've thought, I've processed, I needed a minute. Here's where I am.
And that is
That's
trauma
different.
informed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That is it. It's the practice. So when we talk about embodied leadership, it's taking this leadership, being willing to face the hard things head on often, not being afraid to deal with life on life's terms. Even if we feel afraid, we're not letting the being afraid or the fear stop us, and at least not forever. Maybe we trip, maybe we stumble, but do we get back up? Leaders always get back up. It might take them time. It might be messy. They might make a fool of themselves, right? They might say the wrong thing. They might tear the whole thing down, burn the whole thing down, but guaranteed they're gonna get back up because leaders lead the same way that winners win because they keep going. It's not that winners win because they never lose. They win because they don't quit. Leaders lead because it's what they know. And most leaders are leaders because they have had to go through lots of crap, lots of adversity, lots of things that didn't go their way, lots of unfair situations, lots of things that if they had gone the right way or a better way, they wouldn't have gleaned the wisdom. That's not to say that you have to have a rock bottom to cultivate leadership, but it is to say that you're not a solid leader if you can only lead when times are good. That's not how it works.
Yeah. And you don't see that. If you look at a true leader, you see them leading in those times when it's shit, like when it's a mess, when there's a lot of adversity, right? Like that's really why we have leaders, because we need someone to lead us out of, or, be there kind of holding the flag, like, come this way, like we'll lead you through this mess, right? Doesn't mean the mess is less messy. It doesn't mean that you're not going to see that you may not see the leader fall apart, because let me tell you, leaders do fall apart. Leaders do get confused, they get overwhelmed. They are human beings as well, but they're working. It's a process. Like Smyra said, it's a process. We're always going through that process of reevaluation. And I think that's the biggest thing for a leader, that I'd love to see the leaders that we help come up and master this framework, is that they're able to show up in those moments. Like, we're not led by our emotions. Not always, I won't say ever, because again, it's not, there's a duality for sure. And life is nuanced, but like, if you fall, you get back up, but you're not led. The success doesn't come just because you lead by these emotions. Even if you don't feel like it, you're still going to do it, because that's what a leader does. I may not feel like having that difficult conversation with my husband, but I know that if I avoid that difficult conversation with my husband, it's only going to get worse over time. So the leader in me is like, okay, this is going to be uncomfortable, but we're going to have the conversation anyway, because I know as a leader, and I'm modeling to my children, this is what healthy communication, healthy conflict resolution will look like from a leader, rather than just not facing it at all. Now, that's not to say that there aren't moments when we procrastinate, or there aren't moments when we are not in that leadership, when we're just kind of in that cocoon or whatever, that safe place that we feel like we need to be in. But a true leader reevaluates. A true leader is always in the process of reinventing, of showing up, of being like, okay, I'm taking responsibility of not doing that the right way that time, but this time I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to take the leadership, or I failed at that. And again, failure is only failing forward. It does not mean finalized. That's how I look at it. We fail forward. We don't fail backwards, because decisions are moving us forward. So even if the decision isn't the right decision, it's still moving us forward. We can always reevaluate. So
Always.
leadership is just a beautiful evolution for a person to actually go through.
It is an evolution, and we can put a lot of pressure on ourselves for being, you know, being where we think we should be by a certain time, or like being there wherever there is. Why aren't I there yet? I should be there by now. Right? We can put so much pressure on ourselves, when in truth, if we can embody, which simply means practice, the practice of whatever it is you're wanting to embody. If we're wanting to be a great parent, we have to practice that. If we're wanting to learn a new skill and get good at it, we have to practice that.
Yeah.
Research says to be an expert, it's you putting in 10,000 hours of practice or study, or the combination of both, on the area that you're wanting to specialize in. So for athletes, same thing, day in, day out, in season, out of season, they're showing up and they're practicing. And that's what makes them excellent. It's what usually makes them winners, right? And the difference between athletes who are great and the ones who are good typically is the greats in our world have committed to being great. They have claimed it for themselves. They say it isn't just enough for me to show up and to be on the team. It's really, they have committed to being great, and showing up and doing the work day in, day out, despite how they feel about it. And the same is so true when we talk about being committed to our why. If you could just mute yourself, if you don't mind, who just hopped on. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate when people commit to the why, when people commit to, if you can just try and check by her name, Andy,
I don't have
to
her.
mute.
Let me see if I can find
Yeah.
her. I don't see her here.
Thanks. Got it. Yep.
Did she
When
mute?
we commit,
Okay.
I found it. Yep.
Oh.
When we commit to being that embodied leader, we're committing to the practice. And just like Andy said, when we commit to showing up, even when it's hard. And a part of that is getting over, not even just over, working through, making the decision to work through our traps and hazards. Emotional traps and hazards are the things that hold us back, the things that keep coming up for us. Most people know what their traps are. This is like perfectionism, doubting themselves, self-sabotage. Many of these are trauma responses, so they were created as a response to challenging things that were happening in our past. But many of us know right when we're about to like ring the bell at something, if we tend to have life blow up, or if we tend to start to sabotage right at the end when we're almost done, or we're almost like making it to like a next level, we know how we can show up. These are defense mechanisms. There are ways that we hold ourselves back because our brain is wired to keep us safe. Our brain is not wired for growth, for expansion, or for up level. It's wired for don't let the saber-toothed lion eat the human. Our brain is over 2,000 years old in truth, like as a species, and a lot of how our brain works. It's old programming. And so the new updated programming doesn't just happen by itself. We have to engage in the practice of taking our mindset and our psychology in the direction that we are trying to go. Many of us did not grow up in households and cultures in a society, right, that was really promoting growth mindset or even trauma informed mindset. And so mindset does not work necessarily like an Amazon delivery. We can't always just say, okay, I want to focus more on gratitude and wake up the next day and everything is centered around gratitude. And we never have a self doubting belief or a negative thought or word spoken ever again. That's not how it works. Like, I wish it did, right? We might order a book from Amazon about mindset, right? Or a local bookseller too, right? But it doesn't work as though it's like a magic button. And so we have to put the practice in to shift our psychology and our mindset in the direction that we want to go. And how do we do that? We make a decision. So many of us, and we're not immune to this, Andy and I, but so many of us struggle with embodying our own leadership for ourselves, for our communities, for our families, because we haven't decided. We're waiting for permission. We're waiting for someone to like give us permission to be the leader. We're waiting for permission for like the stars to align, and then I'll do it. I'll take my business seriously when I make this amount of money. You're not going to make this amount of money until you take it seriously. Some of us think I'm going to be more bounded with my kids when I get to this point in my own life. If we wait long enough, they'll be 20, and we never got to the point of doing the thing we knew we needed to do, but we were waiting for the right time, the perfect time, a better time, an easier time. Those are all excuses our mind makes up to keep us stuck.
Yeah, exactly. And there are behaviors, and behaviors can be shifted. They can be broken. Like I say, there's no broken people. Nobody is broken, no matter what you've gone through. I believe that. But we do have broken patterns as a result of what we've gone through. We have broken behaviors as a result. We have broken communication as a result. So with all that, it can feel really messy. And I just want to jump here to what Luana said, that she said, I just realized that sometimes I don't post because I'm not sure what people will say about my strong opinion. Excuse me. And I just want to say to that this is exactly why we're here today and why we've devoted the next 4 days to this, because there are so many Luanas out there that are keeping themselves really small, and they have such a beautiful message to share. And you're right, I have a strong opinion too, especially when I'm convicted and especially when I'm 100% on my mission. I can be very strong opinionated, but that's what makes me the leader that I am. And I'm not going to bow down or back down on my mission or on my message because other people might not agree with me. And I'm not saying it looks like that all the time. There's definitely resistance. There's definitely things that I've had to work through with mentors and coaches and support systems and therapists because of my own background, on my own traps and hazards, right? But at the same time, what makes that leadership, mastering that leadership has helped me still show up even when I'm scared that someone might not agree with me, or someone might cancel me, or someone might say, like, you're, just to give you a very quick example, Luana, because I completely see you in this, is like, I'm not a therapist. I don't have a degree. I'm not licensed. And I was afraid to speak about trauma at first because I'm like, who's going to believe me? Like, who's going to take what I'm saying seriously when I'm someone that barely made it out of high school? Now, that's faulty thinking, because I built a multi six-figure business without a degree, right? Because I'm so convicted in what I do, and because there's stuff that lives inside me that no one else has lived through the way that I've lived through it, I'm able to meet people in a way. I'm intuitive. I'm able to tap into that gift that I have that I can't learn in a textbook. So yeah, have I done things? I have 13 certifications in trauma. But at the same time, it doesn't matter the degrees, the certifications, the validation. If I don't believe in myself and my own mission, then no one else is going to believe in me. If I don't believe in my own opinion, then no one else is going to believe in my opinion. So whether it's strong or mediocre or whatever it is, it's still a matter of that, taking that leadership role and saying, am I convicted in this mission? Am I convicted in this message or purpose? And then being intentional and doing it anyway, even though it's uncomfortable. And this is what we're talking about, what we're going to help you work through over the next few days, is crafting things in your message, your business, whatever it is, to support your next steps so you can master that leadership, because it's a practice. We're not born leaders. Well, I mean, maybe some people have that just innate quality, but it's really a practice, just like anything else. I believe that, at least.
I believe it too. And you're so right. This is a beautiful conversation because it's so true. Like I, yes, doing it uncomfortable. I, had all of the degrees, license, certifications, all these things. And I still found myself holding back and not
Yeah.
posting because I was like, I'm not their one-on-one therapist. They need to know they need to find their own therapist, like to work with one-on-one. You can't just take one post and go on some huge detox or something without talking to your team of providers. We all have these stories in our head that's like, I don't want to do any harm. I don't want to take this out of context so much. I think we feel responsible for how people take something, for how they comprehend it, for what they do with it, which speaks to the intention behind why we're doing something.
Yep.
There's something called ecology, and it's talking about the upliftment of humanity. It goes back to this code of ethic for most professional degrees, but especially for like medicine and psychology, helping professions. Our first commitment is to do no harm. That has to be our intention. It isn't that sometimes harm isn't done, but we have to acknowledge it. We have to work through the steps to create repair for when harm is done. But our intention needs to be in not doing harm. This is why getting clear on why we're doing what we're doing is so important, because when you are clear that your why is based in moving humanity forward, it's based in elevating consciousness, right? That drives your work. That helps you and your leadership, right? If you're trying to raise good humans, then you know that you have to have this blend of like structure, and fun, limit setting, but also healthy boundaries, right? Also giving grace. And it's the same thing with ourselves. So the intention in which we do something drives the entire thing forward. And some of us, no one's exempt in this. Sometimes we haven't taken the time to sit down, and we're going to give you homework today to get clear. And no one's saying pages and pages, but we have to get clear on why we're doing the thing. We have to get clear on what are we standing for? What is the value that we're creating this thing on, right? If it's freedom and everything that we're doing makes us feel anything but free, there's incongruency there. Like it's not lining up. It's the same thing in even being trauma informed. You can want to be trauma informed. You can learn to implement a trauma informed framework for whatever it is you're doing. And you can be very clear that you do not want to teach it. You do not want to lead your clients through it. You simply want to keep them safe in your containers, in your world. And you want to have a network of people that are vetted, that you feel comfortable referring people to. That is leadership. It's saying, this is what I know I do and I do well. This is not in my wheelhouse. I'm gonna make sure people get to where they need to go. That's leadership, right? As parents, as pet parents, right? All the things. We don't do every single thing for the folks that are in our lives, but we know how to get them to the people that can support them on their journey. So sometimes leadership is knowing, where are your boundaries? What do you want to do? What are you good at? What do you not want to do? Because when we try and do all of the things, lots of stuff gets to fall through the cracks. Oftentimes, our own energy, our own ability to have the time and energy to refresh and refuel ourselves. So we are just as tired and just as worn out as if we were doing something that we hated, right? Just to pay our bills, right? So leadership is having the discipline to get clear on why. What do I stand for? What are my values? Why am I doing the thing that I'm doing? Is it still important to me to do this, right? Why am I doing it? Has something shifted? That inner reflection is the path of becoming. Once you get clear on that, it becomes so much easier for us to support you in applying the trauma-informed framework to it. But we can apply the framework to things that sound good, but if they don't mean anything to you, if you don't want to put in the hours to practice them, you're never going to promote your work. You're never going to promote what you're doing. You're never going to be excited or have any kind of joy about what you're doing in your life if you're not clear why you're doing it, why it matters, and what value it's linked to.
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to add to that and piggyback off that too, where, going back to like the motherhood example, we can talk about anything we want to right now. But when you're living in the moment, it may look extremely different, where you might be intentional and have a plan and think, I'm going to do this and I'm going to set boundaries with my kids and everything's going to be great and all this stuff. And then when it's actually happening and life is happening and trauma or adversity is happening around you, or conflict or whatever it is, or the marriage isn't exactly the way you pictured it to be, or the kids aren't exactly the way you pictured them to be.
Yep.
This is where true leadership, I believe, really comes in, because it's like, who am I in this moment? How am I leading myself through this? This was not what I intended on. This is not the marriage that I thought that I was going to have. These are not the people that I thought that I was going to be raising. My son is completely contradicting every value that I've ever instilled in him. What is happening right now? That's when we get to decide on, do I cower to this, or do I still stand in this and still stand for what I believe and still stand for those values and still be very intentional with the conversations and all those things? It's really in the moments of living do we get to decide the kind of leaders we get to be, because speaking about it is great, but when life happens, that's when usually integration doesn't exist for people. They fall short. And I mean that in the most loving way. But all the people that I've coached in all the years I've been doing this, we can have great sessions together and we can get super fired up and we can talk about the post and talk about going live and talk about the business. But then when life happens, they can't hold the capacity. They don't have the capacity to hold the adversity and the triggers and the life and then still comply to what they have to do for their business, for their, work or whatever it is they're doing. So leadership really lies in that like middle and kind of spreads over everything. So it's almost like imagining yourself in those moments. You're not mom, you're not the CEO of your company, you're not anything, you're the leader. And now the leader rises up and it's like overarches everything and says like, all right, now what do I do with all this? That to me is the leadership. It's the becoming out of the mom, becoming out of that entrepreneur and rising above that, because mom ego, entrepreneur ego, client ego, whatever it is, afraid to write the post, all like ego stuff, rising above that, saying, okay, if I want this business to run, if I want my mission or message to be shared, who do I become now? Does that make sense? We want to really get another level of leadership, because that's
it's elevated
it's
consciousness.
elevated. Exactly. It's
What
an
you're saying,
elevated
yes,
version.
elevated. Yep.
Elevated version. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because seriously, in those moments, that's where those traps, like you speak about, the traps and hazards come in those moments. They don't come in these conversations. Everything's great in these conversations. And then it's like when we're living our life, it's like, oh, darn, we didn't talk about that. That didn't happen the way that we said it was going to happen. No. Now life is happening. So what do you do in those moments?
It's true. And sometimes they do come in conversations like this. Something you hear might feel triggered by it, and then you log off, you don't come back, which is fine. Take care of yourself. But do we ever ask ourselves, what did that bring up within me? Why do I feel activated by this? We can trigger ourselves. We can trigger our own selves. And triggers can be important because they can lead us to the thing within ourselves that really is wanting to be healed. And so it can be important to look at how we are showing up. I used to hate this quote all of the time. I still do, kind of, but there is truth to it. How we do some things is how we do a lot of things. And sometimes we want to tell ourselves, oh, I only do that here. I only sabotage here. If we were to really get the microscope out and look at the other parts of your life, you would find these themes, right? Because when Luana said, and I can totally relate to this so much, if we are struggling to speak up in our business, in our relationships, there are probably areas of our life where we're also struggling to speak up for ourselves or within ourselves, right? And it doesn't mean that we need to look at all of these areas at the same time and try and work on improving them all at the same time. But if we commit to one of those areas, rising tides do lift all boats. You will start to see a shift, a positive shift in these other areas. Sometimes the perfectionist in us, the good girl archetype in us, the person who's trying to, make 6 figures in 90 days, will try and do all of that improvement in one week, 130 days, right? I've got 17 goals this week. I'm going to crush it. Our nervous system says no to that. Some of us can't move forward because we are freaking out and I've been here, our own nervous systems. If you think about, if you've ever seen a picture of like a preschool or kindergarten classroom, it is simplistic in the way it's not NASA, right? It's simplistic. There's consistency. The foundational pieces are there in creative ways, numbers, letters, the weather, right? It's all there. And it is like you can trace it almost with your finger. Here, A, B, C, here numbers, here letters. That is really often on a neurological level how our brain works. Our brain does not compute, I want to be a better leader. It does not accept that. Our brain will compute, I'm going to do the thing I say I'm going to do. Now we're getting closer, but it can override that too. If you get down to, I'm going to lead myself through this day in a way that I can be proud of, that it can compute because it's a clear directive. Okay, I have a decision. I got this text. How am I going to respond to it in a way that I can be proud of it? I got this client email. Okay, how am I going to respond in a way that I can be proud of? My kid pissed me off. Okay, how am I going to respond in a way I can be proud of? I got more bills than I got money. How am I going to address this in a way that I can be proud of? I got to post. I don't want to post. I got to sell something. I don't know what I'm doing. How can we address this in a way that moves us forward and that we can be proud of? Our brain can take that and do something with it. So sometimes we need to understand, to embody our leadership, how do we take practical action and emotional strategy, pair them together, and make moves?
Yeah. And I just want to go to the neurological level of this too. And I know you touched on it a little bit, but even small decisions can dysregulate us, because if we are in a triggered state as our automatic state, like we're just always in that fight or flight. I know for me, just as a trauma survivor, and although all the work that I've done, I get overwhelmed extremely quickly, even with all the work. So like when I went back to school, my first trimester, I landed myself in the emergency room. Why? Because I was doing all the things, the 4 kids, the school, the work, but I didn't give my body a transitional period. I didn't say, okay, I'm going into this next phase of going back to school, and I'm gonna just take this like minute by minute, day by day. I went in kind of with like gangbusters. And then when I had that, like, oh, I don't operate like this, like, you know, that, like, you logically know that you don't operate like this. I figured all the work that I did, I prepared myself, all the capacity that I built, but I'm still who I am. So at that level, you have to tend to the garden that you have. You can't start adding things that maybe roses would need if you're planting daisies. And there's nothing wrong with daisies and roses or anything that you're planting. It's just that you have to nurture according to who you are. So if you know that posting makes you really nervous, or you're afraid of the feedback or whatever it is, then you can start by just writing it and not posting it. Writing it and letting it sit for a day, seeing how that feels in your body. Do I feel safe with this? And even if you're still worried about what people are going to say, you can't change that. So no matter if you post today or tomorrow or next week, it may not change what other people think of it. But as long as you are giving yourself the transitional time to say, okay, I'm going to write it. I'm going to just sit here with it, witness myself in writing it, witness the feelings that are coming up, get my body to a regulated state, feeling safe within, knowing that I can't control the outcome of this, releasing that outcome, and then maybe the next day I post it. But at least I gave myself transition time to feel the things I was feeling. That is leadership.
Yes.
That is leadership, because you're tending to the garden tending to your specific garden according to what you need. Not worried that Fred down the street is planting corn and doing all this stuff. No, you've got daisies. So let's just work with, how are you going to get these daisies to grow? Then later, if you want to deal with corn, go with corn. But it's really just a matter of, like, I was looking at everyone else going, well, they can go to school. Well, they can do this. Well, they can do this. Why can't I do this? But I'm not everyone else. I'm Andrea. I have my own individual journey. I had my past, I have my present, and I'll have my future, hopefully. And so how am I going to tend to myself in these moments according to my needs? Your needs are important in these moments.
So important. And that's trauma-informed leadership. It's applying empowerment and choice and connection and safety to your own life, to your own choices, to your own goals, right? If the goal is important to you, and for many of you it is, I think we're needing support in what Andrea just shared about, how do we break this down? Because do it and feel scared and do it anyway sounds great, but it's not a trauma-informed approach. The truth is, we need to make a move, but that move might be one baby step that leads us toward getting to the place where we can do it. Sometimes it's not realistic for us just to be able to wake up, do it, feel scared, move on. Over time of putting in so much practice to calibrate our nervous systems, most of us will get to a place to be able to do that around some things, but maybe not everything.
Yep.
But comparing is killing us.
Mm-hmm.
Being stuck in our head about it is literally killing us, our dreams, the goal, right? We're so stuck. We aren't making any moves, and it doesn't have to stay that way. And so we're here to support you over these next few days in understanding how you can embody more of your own leadership. You are a leader, or you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be at this point in your life, period, if you weren't a leader. And to grow as a leader is going to mean looking at your strengths, looking at your opportunities for growth, and then deciding what you feel, what you are called to commit to put the work in with the practice to get to where you want to be. And in getting clear about that, and in having the courage to face that, two things: you'll find out that this is what I want. I don't want to do it. It's going to be hard. Like I don't want to do it, but I know it's the thing and I can't let it go. It won't let me go. Like, this is the thing. Or you might find this is not the thing. I want it to be the thing. I want it to work. Like, I put all this time and energy and effort into it, and money and blood, sweat, and tears. But in my gut, like in my heart, I know it's not the one. Some of us go through it in dating and picking out anything that matters. You might have this car, it's so much cheaper than the rest, but in your heart, you know it's not the one. And sometimes you're in a point in your life, right, where this is good enough and I need to do it. And we get to a different point in our life where we realize, you know what, I'm not going to show up for this if it's not it. And this is not it. And I don't know what it is, but I know this is not it. It's not until we engage with the process that we can find clarity. I don't care how many groups we take, how many masterminds we take, how many tens of thousands of dollars we spend. If we don't turn inward and get clarity about what we want, what we need, what we stand for, what we're doing, we can spend every cent we have and not be any more clear than we were 5 years ago, right, when we started. And sometimes doing that inner work is going to say, what am I going to commit to? We got to commit to something. And it might not be the shiny thing that you want it to be. It might be just like Luana said, I want to stick and honor to my word. I want to do the things I say I'm going to do. If we take that one decision and walk it out, we can change our entire lives on that one decision. Because two things: we're going to stop saying yes to crap we don't want to do because we're never going to do it. And two, when we say yes, we're going to learn that we are going to have to say no to something else. Everything can't be yes. And some of us, I did it for years, cost me so much time, energy, money, like restless nights in trying to do everything I saw my mentors doing and not really embodying the truth that they're doing this in year 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They weren't doing all of this in year 1, 2, 3.
You
and even if they were, is it working for me? Because even if they were and it worked for them, is it working for me?
Yeah. You can't compare someone's ending to your beginning.
Or someone's middle, right?
Even
someone's middle.
You can't compare, Perry. Comparing really is the death to all your dreams. I'll just be honest. Like, if you compare, you're killing your dreams, because you'll always find someone that's doing it better, that's doing it easier, that's doing it quicker, that's doing it with more success, because that's just the truth of it. But if you focus on just what you're doing, then I promise you, in those incremental steps, in those little things that you're doing, the day by day, the step by step, doing those leadership little building blocks, you will get there. It just may take time, but you can't compare that timeline to someone else. Just like healing is the same thing. People say, oh, well, you can heal in 5 days. No, healing is subjective. I'm never going to say that you can't heal in 5 days. I will say that healing is a process, and it's like delayering an onion. Once you delayer one part of the onion, like a couple of layers, there's other things underneath it, because we have bottoms up approaches that we use for healing. It's not just the top anymore, the cognition. It's now coming from the body up to the cognition. So that's a whole other conversation. But my point being that we cannot compare ourselves because our onion, our layers are very different and they're nuanced. And someone doesn't know what one of your layers is going to be like underneath another one. And you might have to work through and lead yourself through some difficult things in one layer. And that might take like a year, so
or 5.
or 5. My very first business, I had a brick and mortar business for 16 and a half years. I didn't make my first real sale until about 4.5 years into the business. Everything else was just put back into the business. I didn't actually make a profit till about 4.5 years in. And that somebody might be like, oh my God, what were you doing? I believed in it so much that I didn't care. I was like, I'm in this to win this. Like, it's going to happen. And when I did finally reach a successful point with it, it was, at least I could be proud of that. At least it was like, okay, it took me a while, but I got here and I felt like I built a strong enough foundation.
And you learned.
And I learned a ton in those years, and I gained a ton that I can now have in my back pocket and take with me and apply it in other areas of my life or in other businesses that I do. But it's, again, leading ourselves through those things. And over the next 3 days, we're going to kind of build upon this conversation little by little, because the next thing we talk about now is that doing. It's that inner work. It's that messy kind of getting into the truth of like Luana said, like, okay, surface level doesn't want to post because she's opinionated or strong opinion, but really what's underneath the fear of the other opinions? There's a layer underneath that Luana may need to unpack in order to fully step into that leadership in when she's posting or showing up in her business or whatever it is. So we're going to kind of get into that next step of things.
And along with all of us, right? There's always a layer underneath the thing. It's usually not ever about the doing. Most of us in the world know what we need to do to have the result that we want. Anybody who wants to lose weight knows what to do. Anybody who needs to gain weight knows what to do, right? Anybody who needs to get something done in 24 hours. We have Google, right? We have YouTube, we have the things. We can learn a language, right? And stuff. We can do the things. If we're not doing it, that's where we have to look at it, go underneath. Why am I not doing it if this is really what I want? And if it's not what I want, why can't I embrace the courage to admit this is not what I want? And so sometimes we are like putting up all of these fences. We can stay busy to make ourselves seem like we're productive. Busy is not productive. And talking a lot is not leadership. And pretending that things are okay when they're not is not always embodied leadership. Sometimes it is, if you need people not to panic, right, in the moment. But there comes a time where to be an embodied leader, and I feel like the time is now in coaching, in the world in general, where we have to walk our walk and we have to talk our talk. And if we don't, people are going to see right through it. Including ourselves. Sometimes we can't do the thing because we have this little person on our shoulder saying, you can't do that. You never can do that. You barely passed 7th grade. You can't do that. Like, you can't even, like, this is not going to work.
Right. It's a younger version of ourselves, usually is the one that's chirping, all the negative stuff, for sure.
And we have to learn how to lead ourselves, all parts of ourselves, right? From this place of rooted, grounded, adult energy. Everything needs a leader. Sometimes we have like co-leadership, right? And we'll talk more about that, but everything needs a guiding principle, a level of leadership. And if it's not moving forward, I would say there's an issue on some level within the leadership. Your inner leadership, the outer leadership, like a system, something is where the alignment is off track. Because if we're not getting to where we want to be, we have to get curious. We have to be willing to get honest about what's really happening here. And we have to ask ourselves, what's the payoff in me staying stuck? What's the payoff in staying confused? What's the payoff in keeping these traps and hazards as my first armor defense? What's my payoff in the business not working? What's my payoff in refusing to lead myself? What's the payoff in just being a damsel in distress? What's the payoff in like, I'm not good at tech, I can't figure it out, I've paid 17 coaches, it just won't work. But what's the payoff in staying there?
Mm.
And this can be in any area of our life. What's the payoff of fill in the blank? But when it comes to embodied leadership, there's a quote, and it's the truth. It says, we have to be willing to break our own heart. What does that mean? We have to be willing to tell ourselves the truth that we don't really want to face. We do it in relationships, we do it in parenting, we do it when we have this beloved animal that we have to, let go to rest if it can't stay alive in a healthy way. We have to look at the things that we know are hard, but it's also the next right step. But you need community and you need support to cultivate the courage and to be making the moves to build the muscles, the emotional muscle, the spiritual muscle, the capacity muscle, to be able to do these things and move it forward. We weren't meant to do life alone. We weren't. We weren't meant to build businesses alone. We weren't meant to really make impact alone. We all need community. We need leadership. We need accountability. We need structure. And we need to commit to a path forward. So we are delighted that you are here today. We are so happy you're on the replay. Please drop your comments in on the replay, your takeaways. What are you taking away? Yep. We will drop some homework in the Trauma Informed Coaching group. So we have the links. We'll drop it in below this too.
I posted a
how to join that group. Thank you. So check out the comment section.
Yeah. And also the homework too, and we can add to it in the group, but I loved, what are you standing for and what is the value you're creating on it right now? So just even like a quick thought, that's great if you want to just even kind of kick that off there. But there was good things, but check back with the group because there will be some other follow-up questions.
We love you. Thank you for being here. We've had the best time. We are excited to see you tomorrow. Thank you for being here, love. We will see you soon. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.